Well, welcome back to Core Motivations Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Connolly. I'm a certified Enneagram coach and a Symbis marriage coach. If this is your first time here, I want to give you a special welcome. You have stumbled upon an incredible community. And for those returning, thanks for not only committing to yourself, but committing to growth through this podcast and the information shared. Today is a special day. Why? Because today we have reached our 20th episode. This is a milestone, and it is a milestone episode for so many reasons. Let me start with some statistics. Almost half, that's 47% of podcasts stop publishing before they even release their third episode. And then there's what's called the a 6-month drop off. It's where up to 60% of new podcasts quit within the first 6 months. And some data indicates that 75% of podcasters will quit by the time they have reached episode 20 to 25, typically within the first year. So, the other aspect of our 20th episode being a milestone is all the things that were happening during the last 20 weeks of prepping and planning and recording each episode. From working on house projects and fixing the house to sell. And of course, the second part that makes this a milestone was remember Operation Move zip codes, which included packing a 5-bedroom house, hiring a moving company. That was a horrible experience. Picking the right house in our location, didn't see until the day we got the keys, and the 2-day travel to our new zip code with 3 cats, our 75-pound dog, a car, and a small moving truck. So here we are. We did it. We made it to our milestone, our 20th episode. So, what are we doing today, you ask? Great question. Well, at first, I thought we'll keep moving forward and talk about all our next things with type 4, so the next wing. And then I thought, let's talk about celebrations, which I've touched on a few. But then I thought, I want to settle in for another real talk. So, welcome to our second real talk. Now, today's topic is a little heavy. So, I just want to say on the top of this, if you're struggling with depression, anxiety, or other health issues that could need medical help, please seek that help. And if you need someone to talk to, please call a hotline, a friend, your mother, sister, brother, father, or even your doctor. And I will link some of those hotline numbers in the show notes. So please don't go it alone. There's always somebody there, even if you don't know them. I can't stress this enough. And believe me when I say I know it's hard, but please reach out, reach out, reach out. And to those who may not necessarily be struggling in this way, reach out to your friends, your family, perhaps your coworker, and even a stranger. And ask the simple question. While really allowing time, ask this: how are you today? An emphasis on today. I say it this way because a blanket, how are you? It doesn't really invite the person to feel safe to share. And it might even tell them that you don't really have time to sit and listen. Or perhaps it's that the message they're hearing is that they're not important. And it could be that you don't really understand what they're feeling. So make it clear through your voice. And if you're in person, speak through your body language, which sometimes it's much louder than you think. Okay, let's get into it. The real talk topic for today is loneliness. Now, loneliness and being alone are very different. So let's talk about what the definition of the two of them are. Alone, by definition, is of course a physical and objective state of being by yourself, which can be a positive choice, of course, including time for self reflection or even a neutral state of being. Loneliness, on the other side, is a subjective emotional feeling of being disconnected or unwanted. Some of the characteristics are sadness, a sense of emptiness, and even a desire for more meaningful social interactions. Now, key features look something like feeling alone or isolated, even when surrounded by others, a sense of longing for meaningful connections, that you can even have feelings of emptiness, sadness, or grief. It's even a perception that one's social needs are not being met. A lack of intimacy and companionship can be caused by some of the following factors: social isolation, where you might be living alone, having a few friends or family members. There's, of course, the relationship loss, divorce, death of a loved one. There's life transitions, moving to a new city, a job loss, mental health conditions like depression and anxiety, and of course, personality traits like shyness or even low social skills. So, addressing loneliness can have a significant effect on physical and mental health. It has been linked to an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, depression, anxiety, cognitive decline, weakened immune system, and even suicide. And it's important to address loneliness when it arises. See, because there are various strategies that can help alleviate feelings of loneliness, not cure it, alleviate, such as reaching out to friends and family, joining clubs, volunteering, and even seeking professional help. So, for those of you who like statistics, like I do, let's check out some more. Dating all the way back to 2010, one report found that a higher proportion of 18 to 34-year-olds reported feeling lonely or worrying about loneliness compared to older adults. So the loneliness epidemic, it didn't start at a single moment, but it certainly has increased and becoming more noticeable in the 2010s and was made, of course, much worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, other factors that you might see that is from the rise of social media, individualism, traditional community spaces likely contributing to the trend before the pandemic. Now, you can find these reports from the New Yorker and the New York Times. So, loneliness was recognized as a health and social problem before COVID, with pre pandemic rates of loneliness. So, the definition, it was defined as the discrepancy between the relationships people want and the ones they have. And social isolation reported to be around 20 to 25% in some studies. US Surgeon General Murthy was quoted to say in an article written by E. Ross last October 2024 that loneliness represents a major public health risk for both individuals and society. It was also stated that although many people grew lonelier during the COVID-19 pandemic, about half of American adults, they had already reported experiences of loneliness even before the breakout. So, ready for some more numbers? This is from recent surveys. People between the ages of 30 and 44 years of age were considered the loneliest group. So 29% of people in that age range said they were frequently or always lonely. And among the 18 to 29-year-olds, the rate was 24%. And 45 to 65 years old, the rate was 20%. And adults aged 65 and older reported the lowest rate, where they felt 10% of loneliness. So, moving forward into the stats, the findings also show that there is no real gender difference necessarily between men and women as they experience similar rates of loneliness. And there's no real major differences based on someone's political ideology or race or even ethnicity. However, an interesting piece of data shows that adults with more than one racial identity had a much higher level of loneliness. It came in at 42% that were considered lonely or they reported this loneliness. So, in regards to income and education, are you still with me out there? I know, a lot of statistics. People who earned less than 30,000 were considered the loneliest. Reports show that upwards of 29%, and of course those making more came in at 19%. And this was at an income of 100,000 yearly. And there was even reports of those who were even in a much higher bracket that they struggled with loneliness, and that came in at 18%. Keep in mind that social isolation is not the same as someone who is experiencing loneliness. Some describe this as having plenty of family members around, however, they feel unappreciated. Additionally, there's others who experience having other people present in their life, but felt as though they were there because they were deemed useful. And that's what we describe as social isolation. Now, I know that there is such a high rate of people experiencing loneliness that don't even talk about it. So, if you're experiencing this, and I would imagine, just as I have experienced, it's not easy to just talk about it. In fact, it's probably easier to believe who would care that I'm experiencing this? Where are the people who would understand that this is a real experience? And even thinking, no one gets it. So while COVID pandemic did create a sense of loneliness because of all the requirements, to stay in your own space, like your home, and then as things kind of opened up a little bit, maintaining 6 feet distance. Remember the circles in the grocery stores and all the different places that we went? I remember going to the zoo, and keep in mind, most of the zoo is outside, right? We still had to keep a 6 foot distance between families. and we had to wear a mask. And this didn't matter in some cases if you're related to the people. And this has only increased the widespread. So I don't know if you have ever been in a situation where you had to isolate from other people, if you will. I remember when, and keep in mind the terror and fear that stemmed from places like the government and all the places that we were hearing about the pandemic and all the craziness, that it created this intense fear. So I remember when my husband got COVID, and while I was extremely worried about him, I was equally worried about it spreading to me and the family, as well as the people I may be around. And I felt so bad. Maybe not as much as him because he had COVID, but the isolation he was placed under, the implications that he must, you know, go into a specific space with a closed door, that when you come into a public space, and keep in mind, this was at our home, that the message was, whether out loud or implied, don't touch anything, wash your hands, wash everything, which needed to be done before you left the space, and so on. How horrible that was for him, and that he was put through that. Later on, I experienced a situation during some travel where I had a friend take me to the airport. I had actually stayed at their house that evening before my trip. And I traveled to a place where there were elderly people. And the concern was that COVID could be passed to that older person quicker than someone like me. Now, I'm not really sure that how truthful that is. I mean, COVID does not discriminate against age. Sorry if that sounds sarcastic or cynical. Guess this experience and the feelings around it can so easily come back to the surface. Anyhow, during my visit, I got a call from my friend, the one that I stayed at the night before I went on my trip, whom, while she was scared to tell me, said that her kids had tested positive for COVID. Now, of course, I had to do the responsible thing, and I had to tell the people that I was with that I potentially had been exposed to COVID. Now, while that was scary in and of itself, it was the isolation and the horrible treatment I experienced and the double standards that I witnessed. Everyone around me was ordered, maybe the nicer way to say it was directed or even still instructed, to stay away from me, to put on a double mask. And I was strongly told that I must have a test and then a retest, assuring I didn't actually have COVID. I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but it is the sense of, or feeling of, something is wrong with you. And in this case, that something had to be wrong with me. And that we can have this feeling of being separated and alienated immediately. This perpetuated the feeling and experience that I had of loneliness. Yes, loneliness is different, but the reason for the story is to demonstrate how easy it is to go into that space of loneliness. Now, when we lived in Oregon, we lived in a small town, and because of our connections and longevity of living there and in that community, we had lots of people around us in our lives. But when we moved inland, still in Oregon, just a different town, quickly experienced isolation. We worked from home in a place where we didn't have any deep connections, so the loneliness set in pretty fast. We even spent some time and often spoke of the darkness that was in the town and even over our house. So, knowing we were going to move zip codes, we thought there is no way this loneliness can follow us. We believed it was our do over. Fresh start, new connections, even experience, and the end of the loneliness. For my husband, perhaps it was a little easier to come out of the loneliness. But after asking him, he said in some ways it magnified it. He knows a lot of people and a lot of people know him, but that does not equal connection or friendship. And for me, wow, I'm overwhelmed by the silence, the lack of interactions. Even my connectivity with family is less. And sure, yes, they call me often, and that is nice. But the truth is that we're not sharing the same air, and those feelings are completely indescribable. The strangest thing just happened. And I would not say, or would I, that it's a God thing because I don't know the number that just came up on my phone. But while working on the content of this podcast, I got a text saying, "I miss you, honey." Funny. Not answering that text, but it was still nice to read. My conversations on a day to day consist of those had with my dog or the cats trying to tell me that their meal dispersion is very low and I better make a change. The house is far too big to be alone and isolated. Do I get out? Yes, of course. Every day I go on a walk and catch up on all the podcasts I like to listen to, and I even chat with one or both of my sisters, and yet I still struggle with loneliness. See, because I'm a collaborative kind of person. So not having that can play tricks on or in my mind. That message that is on repeat that I'm not worthy of connection, friendship, or relationships, it rings true so very, very loudly. And it perpetuates the thoughts, those negative thoughts that if people wanted to be around me or liked me, they would call or come by. And truth is, as I prepare this, can I really yet again be transparent and say, my eyes are welling up? See, because loneliness, it's a real thing. Many people suffer and struggle with it. It might even be something people don't talk about. Well, I'm here to say it's okay. I'm also here to say it's important to acknowledge and speak it out loud. I'm here to say that people need to know what is happening for you. We can't help what we don't know or don't understand. Suffering in silence is dreadful, among other things. I don't want to be lonely or suffering in loneliness. I'm not happy in that space. But I have to share in my authenticity and transparency that when you are deep in your loneliness, it's hard to take the first step towards doing the things you know will help. I have been walking almost every day since we moved, also because it's sunny and it gets hot early, and yet I don't see people or talk to anyone. Although I did the other day bump into, okay, not literally, a neighbor. His name was Charles. Hi, Charles. He shared that he had back surgery and has been walking every day to keep moving forward with his recovery. But I didn't see anyone walking with him. He does it alone. I go every day thanks to my doggo, but I also go in hopes that the fresh air, the movement will shift my thinking and shift this feeling of loneliness that plagues me. And yes, it does help. But as I shared in our previous Real Talk, I also struggle with depression and anxiety. So this can cause a bit of a crippling effect. I also share this with you because when we are aware that this could be happening to someone we know, or even a person that you're around every day and don't know, that they are suffering in silence, what it does is it brings us into awareness. Again, may I just say, loneliness is a real thing. It's big, Let's find a way to help and support people, those we know and even those we don't know. All it takes is a simple question. How are you today? Now, as we come to a close in our real talk time together, can I bring to light some helps and things to add to yours and my toolbox? Now, of course, these are not new. We're not inventing a new kind of wheel. Rather, this is just a reminder. First, find someone, anyone. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't, and talk about your loneliness. Because the truth is maybe they can relate. And keep in mind, this is not about trying to make someone understand, but rather creating a space to share what your world looks like. Second, try to engage in social interactions. Now, I know this one is hard. It's hard for me too. But how about trying to reach out to family and friends or going for coffee with someone? What about pursuing a hobby? Maybe you don't even know what those are. Maybe it's time to discover it. How about volunteering in your community? They always need help at the Humane Society. Can't go wrong there. You get to sit and play with cats and dogs. Another thing that you might consider is maybe it's time to seek professional help. It's not a bad thing. I actually believe in counseling, a mentor, and a coach. They can really help. They offer a safe space to talk and even just be silent. Now, please keep in mind, mentors and coaches are not necessarily medically trained, although some counselors are also coaches. I know a coach, by the way. And of course, we know all the following self care strategies, but perhaps you haven't tried it or started one of these, like improving self care. Find ways, healthy ways, to get better sleep. Exercise regularly. I think I'm an official professional walker. Do they have badges for that? I don't know. And of course, eating healthy. Confession time. Sugar, it's my kryptonite, but also a great interrogation strategy to get me to talk. So withhold sugar, and I probably will tell you just about anything. But please don't do that. And the one that we often forget is mindfulness, such as breathing and meditation. I just saw this interesting exercise called Five Senses Exercise, and how you need to start in a quiet place, and you can either sit or stand comfortably while you pay attention to the five senses, such as sight. Notice the colors and shapes and textures around you. Hearing. Listen to the sounds in your environment. Smell. Notice any scents you detect. Taste. If you have something in your mouth, focus on its flavor. Touch. Feel the sensations of your body against your clothes, the ground, or any object you are holding. Now, it might sound a little woo woo for some, but the idea is that it helps you be in the moment and it helps you be grounded. You just never know. Now, some of these tools, when done differently with a different perspective, it may be the very thing to help, not fix, not remove, but aid with your loneliness. And now, the legal stuff. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. This podcast is not a substitute for medical care. The materials, movies, videos, or books referred to in this podcast are recommendations only. The views expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast host. That's me or sponsors. Join me each week as we dive into all things Enneagram, self care ideas, self love patterns, and rhythms, share ideas from other reputable authors, doctors, and my favorite podcasters. A big thank you to you for being here with me today on Core Motivations Podcast. And I know you've heard me say this many times before, but truly, thanks for supporting our podcast as it just couldn't be done without all of you. So hit the follow button, share the podcast with somebody, and please leave a review. You can find me, Michelle, on Instagram at core_motivations_coach or through email, michelle@coremotivationscoach.com. So let me leave you with this. Until next time, and as always, I'm rooting for you.